What's up, guys? Today we're going to be doing another budget list of the 5 best $200 Samsung old flagships that you should pick up in 2023. Going to be doing some price updates as well. Alright, so starting with the Note 10 Plus. So we haven't talked about this phone in a minute, but this is such an excellent phone, and you can find it in good condition online for like 240 bucks, if not cheaper. So this phone has come down in price dramatically. At the beginning of the year, it was somewhere hovering around 300 bucks. Now, what's interesting about this phone is it got July security patch, but I think this is going to be the last year for security patches, guys. So what I would do is definitely put some antivirus software on it. That's what I do with a lot of my like really older phones, like the Note 9 and stuff like that. And then just stay away from applications that are not on the Play Store. And I've never had an issue. I have much older devices that I use, never had any type of security issue. So that's one of the things I recommend. But this is still getting security patches. All right, so one of the things that I liked about this phone is that it just has an overall beautiful design. The Aura Glow color on here is just really cool. I think this is the phone that when I take out in public, just when it hits the light and people just want to know what type of phone it is. So it's a very cool design. I wonder why Samsung never actually went back to it. It's aluminum frame, glass back. It's got the classic boxy note design. It's IP68 dust and water resistant, built-in stylus, 6.8-inch display, dynamic AMOLED, HDR10 Plus. It's full 1440p, 498 for the PPI, and just a beautiful display. I mean, this phone came out in what, 2019, and it basically still looks like a phone that came out this year. So definitely a futuristic design from Samsung. And then this phone got its last major OS update with Android 12 One UI 4. It is running the Snapdragon 855. Basically, as far as the software goes, there's not much that this phone doesn't do that the S23 Ultra does. So it does, reverse wireless charging, Samsung desktop support, basically a lot of these Sensu One UI features, and you can use Good Lock as well too. So you're not really missing out on too much as far as software goes. You also have micro SD card support, which you are starting to find less and less phones have it these days, unless it's like a budget or a mid-range phone. It's got 256 gigs of internal storage on the base model and 12 gigs of RAM, which is awesome, so plenty of storage. And this phone also has pretty loud stereo speakers as well too. And you also have under the display fingerprint sensor on here as well, which works really good. The photos on the Note 10 Plus are pretty good still. It's a 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto. It has 2x optical zoom, 16 megapixel ultra wide. If you really want to see what the photos look like compared to new phones, check out my Note 10 Plus versus S23 Ultra video, and I think that pretty much sums it up. So it shoots in 4K 60, and then you have a 10 megapixel selfie cam that also shoots in 4K 60. I think it's just an awesome photo taker, guys, just for straight up stills. Now, yes, you're gonna miss the, space zoom and all that good stuff. But I think for the average person, if you're in outdoors or any type of good lighting, it takes just as good photos as the newest phones, in my opinion. Battery life on the Note 10 Plus is pretty decent as well. It's got a 4300 milliamp hour battery, 45 watt fast charging, which is actually pretty decent. And then you also have wireless and reverse wireless charging on board. And typically I can get about 6 hours of screen on time, even on a refurbished model. So next is the Galaxy S21 FE. This is probably one of the best deals of this year. This and the S21 Plus that we're going to talk about, simply because it's just crazy cheap. Like, you can find it in good condition for 200 bucks, but if you go ahead and get it locked to a carrier like Verizon or T-Mobile, I'm seeing them for $142, $189. It's like really cheap. So this is an excellent phone, and when I got it, I was just really surprised at how well it was for this price point. Like, I honestly think this is one of the best deals as well too. Now, as far as the build quality goes, yes, it is a plastic back, but it's really not that big of a deal because obviously it's harder to crack plastic, right, than glass. And it still has an aluminum frame, so it doesn't feel like a cheap phone at all. It still has somewhat of a premium feel, and it is, like I said, IP68. So the display on here is pretty beautiful. It's a 6.4-inch display. It's 1080p 403 for the PPI. It's a dynamic AMOLED display, 120 Hz HDR10 Plus, and it's completely flat as well too. It's got good bezels on here as well. So it's just an overall classic Samsung display. You also have a Android 13 on here, and this phone will get up to Android 15, guys. It will get Android 15, so do know that. So you can keep this phone for a good while, and then after that it'll get security patches. It does have the Snapdragon AAA processor, and again, which is a decent chip. It's very fast. It pretty much plays anything in the Play Store, PUBG, Call of Duty, whatever. It can play it at really good settings. This phone in particular does not get as hot as, say, something like the S21 Ultra, but you know, speed on here is fine. You do have 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM on the base model. It does have pretty respectable speakers, pretty good bass quality. Under the display fingerprint sensor, it is an optical one, but Samsung does it really well, so it still feels really fast. Now, the cameras on this phone are really good as well. It's a 12 megapixel standard and an 8 megapixel telephoto. It shoots in 3x optical zoom. With a 12 megapixel ultra wide, it shoots in 4K 60 with a 32 megapixel selfie that shoots in 4K 60. So basically, this takes some really good stills, guys. Even in just outdoor lighting, indoor lighting, low light, it still takes really good shots. But like I said, the only thing that it would be missing is it doesn't have the super impressive zoom that you would find in the newer flagships. But I'm telling you, just as a point and click, this is really good detail, good dynamic range, good image processing from Samsung, great punchy colors. It does a really great job with image and video, especially at this price. I think this is amazing, right? So lastly, battery life. It's got a 4500 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt charging, which is okay. It's not really that fast. Wireless and reverse wireless charging is on board though. Battery life is pretty good on here. I'm getting about a full day out of this phone as well too. So if you're a light user, a lot of these phones on the list do a pretty good job at battery life. So this is one of my favorites on the list. All right, so the Galaxy S21 Plus, it's basically, you can think of it as a slightly upgraded version of the S21 FE. It does cost a little bit more, but this phone you can find for $250. I just did a refurbished unboxing if you guys want to check that out. And this is such an awesome phone. It just gives you a slightly more premium experience here. So the material on this phone is full glass and metal, so full premium design, IP68 dust and water resistant. Overall, it just feels a little bit more premium compared to the S21 FE. It does have a bigger display as well too. It's a 6.7-inch display. It's dynamic AMOLED, 120 Hz HDR10 Plus. Gets a 1300 nits peak brightness, 1080p 394 for the PPI. So it is a very good panel, and like I said, if you want a phone that's bigger, then you will really like this phone. You also have Android 13 on here, and again, this one is getting One UI 6, and it will get, you know, Android 15 as well too. Snapdragon AAA processor, it's pretty much the same deal. It does an excellent job with gaming. This phone, I did not have heating problems at all. The base storage is 128 gigs and 8 gigs of RAM. All the bells and whistles are on here. You have the under the display fingerprint scanner. This is the ultrasonic, so it's slightly a little bit faster than the S21 FE. And then you also have, of course, all the extras like Samsung desktop support, reverse wireless charging, all that good stuff. And the stereo speakers on here are pretty good as well too. The cameras on the S21 Plus are definitely a little bit better than the S21 FE. Spec wise is a 12 megapixel standard with a 64 megapixel telephoto lens, so you just get overall a higher resolution shots. It has a 3x hybrid zoom and a 1.1 optical zoom on here. It's got 12 megapixel ultra wide with 8K 24 video, and then you also have a 10 megapixel selfie with 4K 60 video. And it does a phenomenal job again with taking photos. Like I said, check out my latest video. You guys can see stills here. They look really good. I was really impressed with the quality of the shots on these older phones, and especially to get these phones at this price point, taking these type of pictures, I think is extremely impressive compared to something in its price range like the Galaxy A14 or A24 or whatever Samsung has with their mid-range and budget. These are just going to take so much better photos. It's not even no competition. So yeah, 4800 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt charging, wireless, reverse wireless charging. Excellent battery life on this phone. You can definitely get a full day out of this phone, no problem. I had no issues with battery life. So overall, I really like this phone. Again, one of my favorite buys as well this year. Alright, next is the Galaxy S22. So this is a pretty good phone to get for $214 right now on eBay. But the catch is that it is in excellent condition. The catch is that it's locked to US Cellular. So I don't know how many people use US Cellular or know about it, but I've heard about it, but I'm not really sure. It's not like one of the bigger ones like T-Mobile, Verizon, stuff like that. But yeah, so it's locked. If you want to go ahead and just sort of take that, and I'm pretty sure there's ways to unlock phones, but you can get it for $214. And like I said, it's a newer phone. It's last year's phone, right? It's aluminum frame. It's also got a IP68 dust and water resistant glass back, and it's very easy to hold since it's kind of small. It does have a 6.1-inch dynamic AMOLED display. It's 120 Hz HDR10 plus, 1300 nits peak brightness, 1080p, 425 for the PPI. Overall, beautiful display, really slim bezels on here as well too. This one has Android 13, and then you have the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip, which is a fantastic chip, very fast. It blows through everything. My only issue with the S22 is battery life. The battery life is really not that great on this phone, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, but it has 128 gigs of internal storage and 8 gigs of RAM. You also have under the display fingerprint sensor, and again, all the bells and whistles, really good stereo speakers, Samsung desktop support, all the flagship features. So the cameras on here are excellent, really good cameras, 50 megapixel standard, so you're getting really nice high resolution shots on here. 10 megapixel telephoto, does 3x optical, 12 megapixel ultra wide, shooting 8K 24 with a 10 megapixel selfie that also shoots in 4K 60. It is a fantastic camera on here for sure. Takes really good photos in whatever lighting condition, whether it be good lighting or medium lighting or low light. It's going to do a fantastic job. Now the issue with this phone is, one, it's got a somewhat small battery, a 3700 milliamp hour battery, 25 watt wired charging, wireless charging, reverse wireless charging. Battery life is not that good. Typically I'm getting like somewhere around like 4.5 hours to 5 hours of screen on time. The battery life is just kind of okay on this phone. It's definitely not a full day, but if you can get over that, I mean, you're getting it for $214. So I think it's a pretty good deal. All right, so lastly is the Galaxy S10 Plus, which you can find well under 200 bucks, like maybe 150, even cheaper than that. And this is really for anybody who really has to have SD card and a headphone jack on their phone. I really like this phone. This is a phone that I had bought for my dad, and he really enjoyed it. So this phone, it does have an aluminum frame. It's IP68 dust and water resistant, glass back. It's actually somewhat kind of a compact phone these days. It's, well, not really compact, but it's 6.4 inches, so it's not massive phone. It's dynamic AMOLED HDR10 plus, beautiful 1440p display, 522 for the PPI. Overall, just beautiful display. It does have that double punch hole. This phone got Android 12, One UI 4.1. It's also I don't think this is getting any more security patches. The last one I got was in January, so I'm pretty sure this one is done. But yeah, it's got micro SD card support, 128 gigs of internal storage, and 6 gigs of RAM. And it's a blazing fast phone. The Snapdragon 855 phones are still fast even today. It is blazing fast, playing PUBG, Call of Duty. It does a really good job, and it does a pretty good job managing heat as well too. Also, like I said, the highlight is you get the headphone jack and the SD card support. Stereo speakers are on board. Under display fingerprint sensor, very fast as well too. And then you also have pretty respectable cameras. Again, I think the only flaw with these like the Note 10 and S10 is that it maybe in low light it doesn't do as well, right, as the newer phones, but in good lighting, I'm telling you, this still takes pretty good photos. The 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel telephoto, 2x optical zoom, and a 16 megapixel ultra wide. It does shoot in 4K 60 with a 10 megapixel selfie cam, and then it has an 8 megapixel depth sensor as well. It shoots in 4K 60, and like I said, the photos are pretty good for today. It's got decent battery life, 4100 milliamp hour battery, 15 watt wired, and then wireless and reverse wireless. And this phone, it does pretty decent with battery life. I can squeeze about 6 hours out of this phone on here. So overall, it's a pretty decent phone. So thanks for watching this video, guys, and I will catch you guys in the next one.